Okay, everybody, please find your seat. We are going to get started with the next session. I have the absolute pleasure of introducing as our next speaker, everyone's favorite wood chipper, a very jovial man, genuinely very jovial man. Even his belly is jovial, you know? As you just look at this man's whole physiognomy and you're like, he's happy. So, Pastor Isker just told me that we're going to have some fun in this talk. Now, I happen to know that has quite a few jokes prepared. Okay, first of all, don't be afraid to laugh if it's actually funny, but wouldn't it be funny if nobody laughed? Making Andrew very uncomfortable. Nah, I'm kidding. If it's funny, be sure to laugh. Everyone, please join me in welcoming to the stage Pastor Andrew Isker. He's going to be talking about recovering the American will to tell the truth.
Well, thank you all for that reception. Thank you, Ogden guys, for inviting me here. The topic of the talk, like Ben just mentioned, that was assigned to me is recovering the American will to tell the truth. And so after this was assigned to me, I had to enter the deep recesses of the minds of the Ogden guys to figure out why I would be assigned such a topic. And so this was a very terrifying exercise. After sifting through Sasquatches and skinwalkers and obscure Denver Broncos trivia and myriad elk, mule deer, and bear, I realized, I suppose, that I've garnered something of a reputation as someone who tells the truth. And so before I trumpet my own virtues too much. Nobody wants that. Nobody likes that. It's always terrible. I must admit that most of the credit for being somebody that's known as somebody that tells the truth is owed to my dear, sweet parents who, they didn't really know any better, but they strictly kept me on the vaccination schedule. And so whatever form of autism I have, one thing is certain. One thing is very certain. It turned me into Jim Carrey's character from the movie Liar, Liar. And so you might think that compulsive honesty is a blessing, right? The ability to just always tell the truth. But it's actually not, especially when your wife asks you, do I look fat in this? It's not good. And she's not here this week, but she can tell you, like, I always tell the truth. It's not good. It's not fun. But all joking aside, I actually don't believe that the key to recovering the American will to tell the truth is just taking every shot that Dr. Fauci cooks up for you. No, that's not what I believe. That's not where we're going here today. In fact, actually, it's quite the opposite. The direct opposite, actually. If all of you are here, or those of the people, those who are watching it at home, apart from the haters and losers watching it at home, everybody else, all of you, understand that America today is in an epistemic crisis. It is a place where every single institution that has accumulated public trust over decades, or even over centuries, has burned through that capital, burned through the capital of public trust that they held spectacularly in the last 5 or 10 years. Years ago, only a tiny percentage of people distrusted the news media, Hollywood, academia, the medical industry, big business, the government, the financial industry, most ecclesiastical institutions, public schools, and nonprofit charities. Right? Most people that just implicitly trusted all of those things, and if you didn't, if you saw through the lies, right, you were a lunatic, you were on the fringe, you were a weirdo. But now, today, a great many people don't know what or whom to believe. People have seen through these lies. And even a few years ago, right after Stephen, who just spoke, and I, we wrote a couple books, and in those books we happened to talk about this thing called seed oils, right? In our books, we were talking about seed oils. Maybe some of you have read these books and seen what we said about seed oils, and we said like, hey, maybe it's really a bad thing that industrial lubricants are in all of our food. Maybe that's not good for us, right? You said those things years ago, and people treat you like you're a quack. They treat you like you're a lunatic. After we said that in our books, Neil Shenvi mocked us, right? He posted a picture on Twitter of a glass of soybean oil that he was going to drink to spite us. And now, however, right, giant companies like Steak and Shake are making their food with beef tallow, right? Health and, yeah, that's right. You can clap for that. Yeah. Even though Ben told you not to be excited, yeah. Beef tallow. I mean, even, right, you'll see even like little hole-in-the-wall places now, they'll say, we don't use seed oils. And it's like, okay, I'm going there. That's where I'm going to take my family. And health and nutrition are one of these things where the epistemic crisis is the most obviously visible. I think it was the past week, there was a headline in the New York Post that went something like, hey, why are all these 20 and 30 and 40-year-olds suddenly all having strokes? That's really weird. It's like, yeah, I don't really know. What changed in the last couple of years? Strange. Right, health and nutrition is something that we have been lied to about for decades. And you can easily know that they are lies because when you do the opposite of what they say, suddenly you are way healthier, right? There's immediate feedback from doing the opposite of the things that they say. So, for example, for decades, eating eggs was vilified, right? I remember growing up in the 90s and you were told, no, don't eat eggs. Those are bad for you. You're going to get a heart attack and die, right? I'm in kindergarten. They're telling me this, and I'm like afraid of scrambled eggs because I might drop dead of a heart attack at recess. Right? This is really what they did. We had the food pyramid. Like, eat as much grain as you can, as that's good. Don't eat any fat. That's bad. Eat a little bit of meat, but not very much. Right? That's what we were told. And it's interesting, right? It's really interesting because, like, where did this start? Right? Where did this come from? It came from actually the Johnson administration, LBJ, because there happened to be massive inflation that was going on because they spent a lot of money and printed a lot of money. And what happened? This is actually, more things change, the more they stay the same. What happened when there's lots of inflation? Well, eggs got really, really expensive. And so what did he do? He said, all right, scientists, tell everybody that eggs are going to give you a heart attack and you'll die. And for decades, that was the doctrine. That was the dogma in the medical community, that there's too much cholesterol in eggs. And as we know, cholesterol causes heart attacks, so don't eat any eggs. And so for decades, people would avoid eating eggs. And what happened in the intervening years? Everyone just got fatter and sicker and continued dying of more and more heart attacks and strokes and things like that. And so if you toss out all of the mainstream dietary guidelines and you're just like, all right, I'm going to eat the kind of stuff my great-grandparents ate, right? I'll find out, like, what did they eat? Oh, they used lots of eggs and butter and actually real food. And you do that, and almost immediately, your overall health improves. You feel better, you lose weight, right? Everything gets much, much better. And it's tangible, right? You could see this, you could feel it, right? You notice it. And so for many people, health and nutrition are the very first red pill that they take. And as soon as you take it and you see the results, right, they're real, they're physical. You could touch and feel, you know what they are, right? They're right in front of you. Right then, you're like, okay, well, I was lied to about all of that. I wonder what else I've been lied to about with everything else, right? I wonder what else I've been lied to about, right? Then the journey down the rabbit hole begins. And what you discover is that you actually have been lied to about an awful lot. There is where things truly become an epistemic crisis, right? When you are told, right, one day, I remember this in 2020, early in 2020, like, don't wear masks, nobody wear masks, whatever you do, don't wear them. They don't protect you at all. And then they're like, no, you have to wear a mask or we're gonna shoot you in the face, right? Overnight, right? And they just lie about it. They're just right in front of you, and everyone's like, okay, well, I will believe you, right? This shot is 100% effective. Like, yeah, I'm sure you've seen the video, right, of the newspapers, the news stories, Dr. Fauci saying 100% effective, 97% effective, 83% effective, all the way down to like 20, right? Right? They just lie. They lie about everything. And once you realize this, you might think, oh, the sheeple are waking up. They're waking up. They believe they've been lied to. This is good. It can be good. It can be good, but not always, right? You take away certainty from people. You take away things that they have trusted in their entire lives, institutions that they've trusted in their entire life, and you just leave them listless in a sea of information. They're not going to know at all what is and is not true, right? That's the true nature of an epistemic crisis. You have no way of knowing what you can and cannot know. And so a good example of this is the 2020 election. I don't know if these talks are going to be on YouTube, where there still is a very intense censorship regime. So if this gets the new Christendom channel just totally nuked, I'm going to apologize in advance for that. You were warned. Maybe delete this talk. I don't know. But everybody with half of a brain knows that the 2020 election was fraudulent, right? Right? Do you agree? Fraudulent election, not totally fraudulent election. All right. And right, just from a basic, right, constitutional law perspective, right? Not even when you get into like the really zany stuff, where you have like Rudy Giuliani with hair dye dripping down his face, right? All of those, if you remember all of those things. But just the basic constitutional law, right? The United States Constitution says who gets to decide when elections are held and the rules and the laws regarding elections? State legislatures alone. That's it. And they can't delegate that authority to secretaries of state. And what did they do in 2020? They said, all right, State Secretary of State, you can do an entire season of ballot harvesting. We're not going to have an election day like an election. We're just going to have an entire season of just harvesting ballots. Whoever harvests the most ballots wins. Right? That's not an election, like by definition. And it wasn't legitimate legally. But of course, right, no court would take up that case at all, either before or after. Right? Weird. They seem to really care about the Constitution now, but back then, whoa, anything goes. And so, right, just that alone, right, obviously, it wasn't true. It was fake. And we all watched this, happen in real time. I mean, I remember many of you probably did the same thing. You stayed up till 2 a.m. That night, watching the ballots and the numbers and everything come in. And then it's 2 a.m. and they're just like, yeah, we're just not going to count anymore. We're taking a break. And I mean, I've been watching elections, this is maybe embarrassing, since I was 6 years old. I was 6 years old watching the 1992 election between Bill Clinton and George H.W. Bush. Like maybe some of the other 6-year-olds that are in the room are like really, really interested in that stuff. I was. And so every single, even midterm elections, all of it, I'd stay up with my dad watching the TV, seeing what was happening. Never before had I seen them just like, we're going to stop counting and we'll pick it up tomorrow. And then you wake up in the morning and you're like, what do you see? You see the whoop, 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 chart, right? It's like, oh, totally real election. Yeah. Right? Everyone sees the fraud. Everyone sees the lies that take place. At this point, everyone knew that we were being lied to. But, right, just because the regime lies to us right? The people who say something contrary to what the regime says, to what the regime's narrative is, right? They're not necessarily telling you the truth either, right? All sorts of bizarre stuff happened in the weeks that followed. You would hear tales about like Delta Force, dropping down into a server in Germany, collecting all the Dominion data that we actually won California, right? And like things like that. You heard about like Trump's going to release the Kraken, right? He's going to give all the evidence, right? There was all sorts of nonsense that came out of that. You had lots of people who believed that, the white hats, they're secretly in control, patriots in control, right? Like QAnon was a very, very real phenomenon. And of course, I have a lot of sympathy for the QAnon true believers. I know quite a few of them in real life. And they would always ask me about that. Like, Andrew, do you think that's true? Do you believe in that stuff? And I'm like, no, I don't think it's true, but I really wish that it was. Right? I really, really wish that secretly the patriots were in control. Right? But people believed all sorts of things that were not true, that were also not the things that people with power and institutional control told us. Right? They recognized that many of our real problems, in a way that the majority of people could not, right? They recognized that our very real problems that other people couldn't see, right? They saw many of those things, but they were told something equally untrue by someone. And perhaps the whole thing was a disinformation campaign seeded by intelligence agencies. That possibility remains. But what this demonstrates is the nature of the epistemic crisis, right? Okay, we know that we're being lied to about X, Y, or Z, and the deck is cleared, and now you can believe anything, whether it's the truth or not. Someone who has been lied to for their entire life about everything and doesn't have something firm to hold on to will believe anything, so long as it is not coming from the sources of the original lies. Right? Either that, or they become a paranoid schizophrenic, and they just stop believing in objective reality entirely. And so, like, if you've ever seen like a badly abused puppy that a friend of yours has adopted, like see what they're like, right? They're just very skittish and scared, right? That's what this turns people into. And so this, right? This is the crisis that our institutions and our leaders, including a great many of our church leaders, have created. Right? Sometimes you see this online where like squishy, normie evangelical leaders, they're very weak. And what will they do? They'll decry conspiracy theories. Like how many Gospel Coalition articles were there over the last several years about conspiracy theories and QAnon? Like, I mean, I thought it was like Joe Carter's whole shtick was like, oh, I can't believe these people believe in all these insane conspiracies. It's all Trump's fault, right? This is what they say. Never once do they look in the mirror and say, wait, what role did I play in this, right? All of the pastors who are like, you need to love your neighbor and get the vaccine or you're sinning and you're going to hell, right? All of the ones who said that, right? Have any of them come out and said, hey, I was wrong. I was absolutely wrong. And you shouldn't have listened to me. Your instincts, all of you who I slandered as bad Christians who refused to get this thing, right? I sinned against you, right? How many of them have said this, right? Instead, they're still out there decrying conspiracy theories, right? They doubled down. Right? They doubled down on the lies, right? They tripled down, they quadrupled down on the lies. And so people just do not know what to believe. And so sometimes they stumble upon the truth, right? Sometimes they stumble upon the truth, but what do? They're likely to go ahead and just believe other different lies. And so how is a thing like that combated? Right? How is a thing like that combated? Well, to start with, right, we have the truth, right? We have the truth, right? We have the truth that is absolutely rock solid that we can cling to. We're not tossed about in the waves to and fro, right? We have the truth, and that is Jesus Christ, right? We have the very words of the God who created the universe in our hands, right? God has spoken, right? He has left us with his word so that we can know the truth, right? He has given us the Holy Spirit, right? The Spirit of truth, right? The Gospel of John says, however, when the Spirit of truth has come, he will guide you into all truth, right? The problem with this, however, is that a lot of people have the Bible, and many people also claim to be guided by the Holy Spirit. And so, maybe we'll take a current event, something going on right now. Right, when evangelical leaders today, right, tell you that the Deuteronomic curse, that foreigners will rule over you and plunder your land, right, that's actually the Great Commission being fulfilled, right? Is this statement from the Holy Spirit or from the father of lies, right? Where does a statement like that come from? Right, you've read the Gospels, you see, right, who can quote Scripture as well, right? Satan has the Bible as well. Right, so how do we discern these things? Right, how do you discern if someone is using the Bible in a manipulative way, in a way that is false and untrue and bad? So what does the Scripture tell us about false teachers? Right, what does it say? Peter in 2 Peter 2, right, he says, "But these, like natural brute beasts, made to be caught and destroyed, speak evil of the things they do not understand, and will utterly perish in their own corruption, will receive the wages of unrighteousness as those who count it pleasure to carouse in the daytime. They are spots and blemishes, carousing in their own deceptions while they feast with you, having eyes full of adultery, and that cannot cease from sin, enticing unstable souls. They have a heart trained in covetous practices, and are accursed children. They have forsaken the right way and gone astray, following the way of Balaam, the son of Beor, who loved the wages of unrighteousness, but he was rebuked for his iniquity. A dumb donkey, speaking with a man's voice, restrained the madness of the prophet. These are wells without water, clouds carried by a tempest, for whom is reserved the blackness of darkness forever." Right? So I'm not saying that every Christian leader who repeats these lies is necessarily a false teacher reserved for the blackness of darkness forever. Right? Every single one of them. That's not what I'm saying. Don't confuse what I'm saying. Right? They simply naively trust the men who influence them, and naively trust them and believe that they're telling them the truth, right? They believe that men who are lying to them are telling them the truth. And many of them also know what will happen to them if they ask the wrong questions as well, right? Their motivation is self-preservation and at least intellectual cowardice. Right, that is their motivation. Right, men who are unwilling to challenge lies. Right, that's because they know. Like, what is their main mode? What are they supposed to do? Well, they're supposed to keep the peace, and they don't want to violate the most important imperative in modern evangelicalism, which is never, ever, ever offend anyone, especially women. Right, never do that. Right? They are terrified of doing that. And if you're going to confront lies today, right, you are going to offend a lot of people, including people who have the most power in our society and in our churches, which is in a gynocracy, right? It's women, right? You're going to offend them if you tell the truth about things that are lies. So they don't do it. They don't do it. They don't even consider that the possibility that many of these people are lying through their teeth, right? For an example, you could see this, like the Southern Baptist Convention just had their conference this week, and what happened? right? They had the third opportunity in a row to vote to just agree with the Bible about what it says about women being pastors. And they're like, nah. More than half of them, like, nah, I don't really want to do that. That might offend someone. That might offend the lady pastors we have at my church. We can't do that. Right? They are motivated by cowardice and self-preservation. Right? They are the wicked shepherds of Ezekiel that consume the sheep. And so it's not necessarily like they're exactly like the men in 2 Peter who are consciously trying to manipulate the church and destroy it from within. The majority of them simply don't want to lose their place and their position. Right? That's what motivates them. But the guys at the top, right, the men who influence those men, influence the cowardly pastorate, right, their motivation is beyond self-preservation. Their motivation is not cowardice, right? They are just like the apostle describes, right? Having eyes full of adultery and hearts trained in covetous practices, right? Having eyes full of adultery and hearts trained in covetous practices, right? If I tell this lie convincingly, right, what will I get? I will get a massive audience. Right, I'll speak at conferences, not just like this one with 1,000 people. It's a nice size conference. Tens of thousands of people. I will be invited to all of the nice things. I'll have the best seats at the feasts. Right, I will be honored in the synagogues. Right, that's what they believe. I will contribute to the New York Times. I'll be invited to speak on CNN. I will be rich and famous. Right, if I just lie convincingly. Right, and so in an age like ours, and I'm sure you could probably know who I'm talking about actually with these guys, right? In an age like ours, where the epistemic crisis, notwithstanding, right, there's way more people that just don't know what to believe, right? There still are many, many, many people who want to be told lies, right? They want to be told lies, and so. Right? If you tell the truth to a person who wants you to lie to them, right, you will be the one that faces repercussions. Right? If you want to be lied to, you don't care about the truth. You don't care. You are the kind of person that, right, you feel a lump somewhere, you go to the oncologist, and right, he's a good doctor. He's going to be honest with you. And he says, you got stage 4 cancer. We did the biopsy and it doesn't look good. Right? There are many people who would just rather be told, yeah, you're totally healthy, full, clean bill of health. They would rather be told they're fine than be told they have cancer and they're going to die. Right? That's what many people are like. Right? Many people would react to that doctor and freak out on him and yell at him. Right? Go find a different doctor who's going to tell me what I want to hear. Right? That's what happens to people who tell the truth. They will be attacked. They themselves will be lied about and falsely accused. Right? They will be expelled from synagogues, as it were. And what do they get out of it? Right? What do the truth tellers get out of it? Right? Do they get a nice, easy sinecure? Right? A nice fat job? Right? A big church with a staff who writes and focus groups all their sermons for them? Right? Do they get those things? Do they get nice things for telling the truth? No. More often than not, right, they get nothing but pain and grief. Right? Telling the truth in a world that loves lies takes courage. It takes courage. The best pastors that I've had, the very best ones, have told me things that I did not want to hear, that I personally did not want to hear. And right, the easiest thing for them would have been just not to tell me that thing, right? Because there's a risk there for any pastor and even any father who's shepherding his own children, right? There's a risk there that if you tell the truth here, right, if you tell this person this thing they need to hear that will benefit their life, that will be good for them, but it's painful, right? If you tell them that, there's a risk that the relationship you have with that congregant, a person that you care about, will be irreparably damaged. And good pastors always take that risk. And if you've never had a pastor like that, right, oh man, my heart breaks for you. And unfortunately, there are many pastors that never tell anybody these things, and it typifies their entire ministry. They don't tell the congregation true things in the service, and when they're one-on-one with congregants, they won't tell them things they need to hear. Good pastoral counsel. They'll just tell, yeah, you're fine, you're good, right? Be warm and filled, right? That's what they tell them. It's heartbreaking that is the case, because telling the truth is costly, right? Telling the truth is costly, and that vocation of pastor is one where people need to be willing to bear that cost of telling the truth on an individual level and on a group level. And so the truth tellers, right, if they receive nothing tangible, right, that might be your question. Well, these guys are telling the truth, and they're like, all they're going to get is grief and pain out of it? What gives? Why would they do that? Right? Why do these men tell the truth then? Because they serve the God of truth and not the Lord of lies. Right? That's why. They serve the God of truth and not the Lord of lies. Because a lie, right, gives you an immediate short-term gain. Right? We all know this from when you're a little kid, right? You know, like, okay, Andrew, did you break the cookie jar? And my mouth is covered in chocolate and cookies. Like, no, Mom, I didn't break the cookie jar. Then you get in trouble. Like, maybe you think you're going to get out of it. Right? That's what a lie does. It gives you a very short-term gain, very immediate gain. But what is telling the truth? Right? Telling the truth is an investment in eternity. Right? It's an investment in eternity. It is something that quite often, right, you might never see a return on your investment until you are in glory, right, from telling the truth. There are many, many notable truth tellers, courageous men who told the truth, toiled away in obscurity their entire lives, and not until after they're dead is there any fruit of the things that they did. Right? Truth tellers do not do it for even for their own glory. They don't do it because they get some kind of gain out of it. They do it because it's true and it's right and it matters. They do it because they believe their God. Right? You think of the Reformation and many of the martyrs of the Reformation. You think of men like Jan Hus. Right? What did he like? If you saw him burned at the stake, right, and you're one of his followers, and you think, well, it's over, right? We're just never going to win. We're never going to see the church reformed. It's done, right? What does he say? No, in 100 years, right, someone is going to come. And he was absolutely right. He was absolutely right, right? He knew the things that he did in this life, right? He was not going to see the fruit of it until long after he was dead, but he did it anyway. He did it anyway, right? This is one of the major themes of the entire Bible, is doing faithful things over a lifetime where you are not going to see any fruit of that. Maybe your children will, maybe your grandchildren will, but you do it anyway. You get nothing, no personal gain out of it whatsoever. And in fact, every incentive is lined up for you to do the opposite of that, but you do it anyway. Right? These are men who tell the truth, truth tellers, that if anything, right, a total commitment to the truth as in terms of an investment, right, it doesn't show anything but losses for decades, right? You're not even gains. You're losing more and more capital as you go. And so why do they do it? Right? Why do they do it? Because their hearts ring out with let God be true and every man a liar. Right? Let God be true and every man a liar. I do not care what everyone else in the world thinks. I know what is true, and I'm going to tell the truth. Right? We named, CJ and we named our podcast Contra Mundum, and I'm butchering I don't speak Latin. I'm sorry. Everyone's like, you butchered that, Andrew. You didn't say it right. Probably, I don't know. What matters is what it means, right? What does it mean, right? It's the saying of St. Athanasius, right? What's the saying, right? Athanasius, the entire world is against you. What does he say? Well, then I'm against the whole world, right? That is the attitude that a teller of the truth has to have, right? I don't care if no one believes me. I don't care if you all think I'm nuts and crazy. I know what's true. I know what's right, and I'm going to say it. I'm going to say what's true, right? That's what men like this do. And so, I think of the context, right, with the quote from Peter of the apostolic church. I think of that context, right? The false teaching that Satan unleashed in the church from AD 30 to AD 70, right? It produced its own epistemic crisis, right? That's I keep using that term. That's what it is. It's just when nobody knows what or whom to believe. Right? No one knew precisely who they could trust. Because what happened? The apostles are calling the false teachers, right? Okay, that's good. But you're just imagine being a normal congregant in that church that's beset with false teaching, and here comes Paul or Peter or one of the apostles saying, that's a false teacher, don't listen to that. Well, what do the false teachers do? Right? They say, no, Paul is a false teacher. Peter is a false teacher. Listen to me. And so if you're there, what do? How do you know who to listen to, right? You don't know that much. Both of the things they're saying are plausible and sometimes maybe make sense. And so how did the Apostle Paul deal with this? Right? How did he deal with being accused of being a false teacher? Right? Well, when faced with such accusations, right, he told the Corinthian church in 2 Corinthians, what did he tell them? Right? He told them, I refuse to take anything from you, right? Any pay, right? I didn't take anything from you at all. In fact, the churches in Macedonia paid for me, or what else did he do? He'd work with his own hands to provide for himself, right? I am doing this because I love you and I love the truth, right? That's why I'm doing this, right? He would go to great pains to show that he was not manipulating them. He was not taking advantage of them, that he got no gain out of this other than eternal gain, right? Other than the glory that he hands over to the Lord Jesus Christ. That's the only thing he gets out of this, right? Then motivations actually matter, right? Because how does Peter describe the false teachers? They have eyes full of adultery. They're covetous, right? A tree is known by its fruit, right? A tree is known by its fruit. And, right, people that love lies, people that are afraid of confronting lies, both of them, what kind of fruit do they produce? Right? Do they produce churches that are full of godliness and faithfulness and righteousness and zeal for the Lord? Or do they produce places that are a mess? Right? What do they produce? Right? The proof is in the pudding. Right? And so, right, that's what our truth tellers have to be. Right? We have to produce good fruit. We have to produce fruit that shows the things that we are saying are absolutely true. And so, if you cannot tell, right, is this guy telling the truth or not? Right, is this guy telling me the truth? I don't really know. Like, you'll soon find out whether he is by the things that he does. Right, more than anything else, if you love the truth, if you love telling the truth, right, you must be committed to righteousness and faithfulness. Right, you must. Right, you can't be someone that's like, well, in some things I'm going to tell the truth, but I also want to sin a little bit, right? No, you can't. That's not a truth teller because you are living out lies, even when you might tell some true things here or there, right? You must be totally committed to faithfulness in Jesus Christ, right? Those who love lies, right, do not love righteousness and faithfulness, right? A truth teller, right, does not bring, right, some things I'm going to bring to the light, but everything else I'm going to keep in darkness. No, that's not a truth teller. They bring everything to the light, including the things that he himself has done, right? Including the things that he himself has done. And so, with all of, this is all prefatory remarks, right? That's just the introduction. I'm just kidding. No. But within that context, right? Within the context of both, right? Because you have two things. Right, you have you have an epistemic crisis for a whole lot of people have no idea what to believe or who to believe. And then on the other hand, you have a whole lot of people that want to be told lies, right? So within that context, I can ask the question of the subject of my speech. How do you recover the American will to tell the truth, right? How do you do this? I was recently asked by a congregant of mine, and this is really weird to like talk about yourself positively, but so bear with me. Maybe I should just invoke Trump and be like, many people tell me you're the best. How are you so good? How do you do it, sir? But I had a congregant ask me, Andrew, you seem to have really good discernment about things that are going on, right? So like, how do you do it? What's your secret? Like how have you developed the ability to discern things? And of course I told him, well, you have to have an IQ of 185 starting out. But no, like the secret, right? The secret to discernment is honesty and humility, right? Honesty and humility, right? That's like, I'm a very humble guy, right? The secret to humility is honesty and humility, right? Most importantly, right? You have to be honest with yourself and have an accurate understanding of how good you are at things, which we always overinflate, right? We always think, I am so good at everything. I can figure it all out. I am the best. I'm the smartest guy in the room, right? No, you can't do that. You have to be like, no, you're way dumber than you think you are, Andrew. That's like, when you start doing that, then you can figure a few things out, right? You need to be honest about yourself, right? About your own finiteness and your own biases. I know that I've been wrong about things in the past, right? I've been wrong about many, many things. Now, looking at my Twitter account, you might not think that, but I have been wrong about lots of things in the past. I have believed things that are not true, right? I have listened to people that I thought were telling the truth, and it turns out they were not at all. And so on the basis, right, of my own experience, I know that I am going to be wrong about things in the future, right? There are certain things I know I'm going to get wrong. I know that right, I'm going to listen to people and they're going to tell me something that I want to hear and I'm going to believe them and it's going to be caught like hook, line, and sinker, right? I know that happens. I know that I do that, right? We all do those things. And so one of the hardest things in the world is admitting that you were wrong about something publicly. You're wrong about something publicly, right? Because why? We invest our entire ego, our entire sense of self-worth in being right. I want to be right. I want everybody to know that I am right. But you'll often see people who are demonstrably wrong about something. What do? Right? What do people who are like, yeah, they're totally wrong about this thing? Do they say, you know what, guys, I was wrong. Please forgive me. I made a mistake. I got it wrong. Sorry. Right? No, they don't do that. They're like, no, here's how I was still right. I mean, it's like here's how Bernie can still win. Right? Here's how I could possibly be still right if you look at it this way. And we do all sorts of mental gymnastics. You can see that I am actually the smartest guy you know. Right? That's why people, they dig their heels in. They double down. Right? I know people who, to this day, are absolutely certain that Saddam Hussein had nuclear weapons. We just need to look in Iraq a little bit harder. The plutonium bombs are there somewhere, right? They can't admit that, yeah, I got that one wrong. Sorry, George W. Bush lied to me, and first time a politician's ever lied to anyone. Right? You have to admit you were wrong when you were wrong. Right? You have to, very easy thing to say, hard thing to do. Right? But you can only do it when you dig deeply. Right? To be honest with yourself and to ask yourself, right? Why did I believe this thing that wasn't true? Right? Have you ever done that? Right? Very few people have. I mean, you're all the very best people, the best and brightest of the whole country right here in this room. So maybe you have, but very few people actually do that, right? When they somebody has lied to them, when they believed a lie, when they believed that something wasn't true, just to sit back, right, and ponder, right, why did I believe that? Right? Why did I want this thing that isn't true to be true? Right? What about me? What about my character? What about the things that I want drove me to believe things that are not true in spite of all evidence? Right? Deep down, everyone believes the things they want to be true. Right? Everyone believes the things they want to be true. Right? And this is how you get people, like, you could just dump all of the evidence on them about any subject. Like, here's where you're wrong, here, and here. And be like, yeah, I don't believe any of that. I believe this crazy thing anyway. Right? It's like arguing with Ben Garrett about the flat earth. Right? It's like, look, man, he's like, no, conspiracy, NASA, they doctored all those photos. Okay, man, whatever. Right? Picking on Ben a little bit, but like, there's people like that, right? That no matter what you say, no matter what evidence you have, they're like, I don't believe it. I don't believe that happened. Right? People only believe the things they want to believe, right? How many of you are in sales, right? Any sales in here, right? You know this, right? You know this really, really well, right? The best salesmen in the world tap into this, right? What do you want to be true? Well, I'm going to tell you that, right? My product is going to give you the best thing, all the things that you really, really want. It's going to do that for you, right? The best salesmen in the world do this. And so you have to confront your own biases as objectively as you can so that you don't get fooled again. At least not the same way. You're going to get fooled again, sorry, but not in the same way. Right? Not to get fooled in the exact same way by the exact same people with the exact same lies. And so if you've done that, right, you've confronted yourself, like, why do I believe things that are not true? Right? Then you could evaluate the people that have told you lies. Right? When someone has demonstrated that they lie or unknowingly push lies, right, without repentance, right? The people that are like, yeah, do this thing, and then they never apologize, they never say they're wrong. Right? You learn to do what? You learn to take everything that person says with a grain of salt. Right? Well, it's like Michael Crichton in one of his novels described the gel man amnesia. Some of you maybe are familiar with this. Right? It's about a guy who opens up a newspaper and sees the newspaper is totally wrong about this subject that he's an expert in, and every single thing is completely wrong. It's all garbage. And then he goes ahead and reads the rest in the newspaper as if every single thing they report on is absolutely right, absolutely true, right? We all suffer from that, like gel man amnesia. We all do that, where someone demonstrates this guy is completely out of his depth. He has no idea what he's talking about. He's lying to me. But then you believe him about everything else. Well, you can't do that. Once someone has demonstrated in one area that it's false in the whole, right? There's like a Latin phrase for that. I'm gonna have to ask Stephen what that is. Falsus in something or other. Right? It's an ancient knowledge. Maybe it's from Aristotle. I don't know. Right? You learn you cannot trust people. You learn. There's this very old fable that we used to tell kids. Maybe they don't do it anymore, about the boy who cried wolf. Right? If someone lies to you repeatedly, you don't believe him anymore. And it's taught to children so that they would tell the truth in everything, so that when something important happens and you need to trust that someone is telling you the truth, you will be listened to, right? That is what we have to recover. We have to recover a willingness to reject liars and to encourage men who are willing to take risks to tell the truth, right? So for me, that's in anything that I've done, it's like, all right, I keep like a mental list. All right, I don't trust that guy. I don't trust this guy. I don't trust this source, that source. I'm skeptical of the things. Sometimes they tell the truth, but I'm not going to just wholesale believe it. Right? You learn to be very, very discerning and to trust very, very few people. But then when you can find someone that you could trust, right, that has proven it, has demonstrated it over and over and over again, right, then you treat that as a precious thing. And so the other thing that those in search of the truth must recognize in themselves if we're being honest with ourselves, is that we actually do not know as much as we think we do. We don't know as much as we think we do. I'm about to turn 40 next year. 40 years old. I'm getting old. Rod Dreher thinks I'm about 22, but I'm actually almost 40. And I know way more stuff today than I did when I turned 30. Right? I know way more stuff. But my awareness of all the things that I don't know is like 100 or 1,000 times greater than when I was 30. Right? This is something that comes with age. Right? You learn a whole bunch more stuff. But then you also learn, whoa, the world is way bigger, way more complex than I ever thought it was. And I know way less stuff than I thought. Now the percentage of stuff about the world that I know, even though it's gotten bigger, the percentage of total things to know has gotten way smaller. Right? You learn to have a humility that you lacked. And this is something that comes with age, right? It does. Maybe when I'm 50 or 60 years old, I'll finally, truly, actually be humble. We'll see. It's something that comes with age. And the most important thing that you could say as someone who tells the truth is, right, I'll put it this way, the most important club you can have in your bag as someone who tells the truth is the club called, I don't know. I don't know. I do not know. I do not have an opinion on that. I don't know enough about this particular thing to be able to comment on it. Right? It's a club in my youth I just never used. Right? I would use every other club but that one. I know everything. Why would I use that? Right? It takes a great deal of humility to swing that club. If it's an actual golf club, for me, it's like the 5 hybrid. Like I swing it might be a great shot, or I might look really, really stupid. And usually that's the case, right? You want everyone to think that you are really smart, that you know everything. And so in ignorance, you spout a hot take about something you don't know enough about to have a sturdy opinion. Right? It's very easy to do. But this almost always, ends very, very, very badly. Right? Instead, it's just better to say, hey, I don't know, or get back to me on that. I'll give you an opinion after I've thought about it. Right? Way better to do that. Right? Because what are you doing with that? You're putting an investment in someone, right? Someone is asking you a question, right? Which means, what are they saying? They're honoring you by saying, I value your opinion. And if you just fire off a hot take, what are you doing? You're saying, I don't respect you enough to give you the honest truth, which is, I have no idea what I'm talking about, right? No, you can't do that. The truth teller has to be humble, right? Has to be able to tell the truth in every way. It's particularly about themselves. Because if you do that, if you just spout off a hot take, right, the facade of being the guy that knows everything about everything, right, that falls apart. Right? People no longer think you know everything. Well, guess what? Nobody ever thought that anyway. Nobody thinks you know everything. It's way better to have that facade fall apart and just have your integrity remain intact. Right? It's good to say, I don't know, often. Right? Both to others and to yourself. Right? Those are the things. If I'm outlining principles, I guess I didn't outline like number 1, number 2. But these are the principles you have to have as a people that want to hear the truth and a people who tell the truth, right? Honesty and humility. And more than anything else, right? The ultimate one, more than anything else, recovering a will to tell the truth requires courage. It requires courage. It is easy to shrink back in the face of lies. It's easy to shrink back in the face of lies that everyone believes, and if you tell the truth, they're going to hate you for it. Another parable, another fable children were always told was the fable of the emperor who has no clothes. Right? The emperor has no clothes, and a little boy says, that guy is naked. Right? And then finally, there's a preference cascade, and the scales fall off of people's eyes. They're like, yeah, he is naked, isn't he? Right? It takes courage. right? It takes courage like a little child can have to tell the truth, right? It's much, much easier, way easier to say, yeah, I know that's not true, but is that really a hill worth dying on? Right? How many of you have heard this before from lots of people? Right? Yeah, man, I know it's true. I believe you, but just don't say that publicly because, man, what's the cash value in this? Like, is that hill really worth dying on? Right? Sometimes that's true. Right? Sometimes you have to have prudence. Right? Sometimes you need to be strategic and you need to heed the Lord's words about counting the cost. Right? What's the cost going to be if I say this? All right, is that worth it? Yes or no? But more often than not, most of the time, right, men like this, men in our day, men who say, that hill's not worth dying on, right? They will never find a hill worth dying on, right? That hill's not worth dying on, you fall back to the next one. This one isn't worth it either, you fall back to the next. Eventually you run out of hills, right? Eventually there is a hill worth dying on, right? I mean, you see this. Homosexuality, that one's not worth dying on. We're not gonna fight that. Gay marriage, that hill's not worth dying on. And then what do? Transgenderism, that one's not worth dying on. All right, how about grooming little kids in public schools to have their genitals removed? Right, is that hill worth dying on? Maybe, I don't really know, right? That's the way they are, right? People look at you like you're a freak, you're obsessed with little kids' genitals. It's like, what? No, you people are trying to chop them off. What's wrong with you? Right, that's how they treat you, right? No, that hill's not worth dying on, right? No, you have to be able to confront these things. And usually you have to confront them earlier and far more often, right? We wouldn't be at the point that we're at if every conservative pastor in America was just like, no, the Bible is true. This stuff is repugnant. This is disgusting. God condemns it. I don't care what you think, right? I don't care. This hill is worth dying on, right? We would not be in this place 20, 30 years later if someone said, yes, this hill is worth dying on. Right? Someone has to be the first one through the door. Right? Someone has to be the one who's going to charge the machine gun nest. Right? Somebody has to be the one that yells, I'm going in. Leroy Jenkins. Right? You have to be that guy. We need those guys. We need all of them. Right? Courage, countenanced by humility, right? Because you can be both. It's true, right? People don't think you can, right? You can be courageous and humble, right? You can be courageous and humble. You can be restrained. You can know I'm finite. I don't know everything. My skills and abilities are only so much, and you're honest with yourself, right? You could be courageous and say, but God has given me some things. I know some things, and the few things I do know, I am going to max out. I'm going to use all of them for God's glory. I'm going to use all of them to tell the truth, and no matter what it costs me, right? Courage, countenanced by humility, is the answer to the epistemic crisis, right? People, right? All of these people, I don't know who to trust. How do I trust anybody? How do you know to trust somebody? That guy got beaten up and bloodied for telling the truth, and he got nothing out of it. You should trust that guy, right? You should trust what that guy has to say, right? People will trust those who are both courageous and also humble. In a world where no one knows what to believe or whom to believe, right? That future belongs to those who have demonstrated courage by telling the truth in ways that personally have cost them, right? That is the world that we are in today, right? That is what who the future belongs to, those who have courage to tell the truth, right? God has created these conditions, right? He's created these conditions where those who are willing to take serious risk by telling the truth will be the ones who build the future. right? God has created these conditions. Like, where does this epistemic crisis come from? I don't really know, right? Well, God made it, ultimately, right? God has made it. And what does that set up? What does that open up, right? The only people, I mean, just think of it right now. Like, we're like a couple years away from no one being able to trust anything that is on any video or pictures or anything. I mean, we're already kind of there, right? Anything that you see on the internet, like the internet's always been this way, but now it's exponentially worse with AI, right? It's like, I saw a video and it looked real, right? I can't tell you how many people have sent me an AI video and they're like, did you see this? Can you believe this happened? It'd be like, Donald Trump at a press conference, like just slamming somebody, it'd be hilarious. And like, man, that's not real. He didn't actually say that. Like his lips, it's like a Chinese, movie from, Kung Fu movie where the lips are moving and he's not talking, right? Like that's not real. But we're at the point where people are going to believe anything. They'll get burned enough where they now won't believe anything at all after that, right? We can't trust anything at all. Well, who does that advantage in the future, right? Who does that advantage? It advantages those who have taken risk to tell the truth, right? People that have gained the trust of everyone else through courage, right? God has already built the incentive structure to recover the American will to tell the truth. And so the only question left is if you will respond to those incentives. The grace of the Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the communion of the Holy Spirit be with you all. Amen.